Welcome to the John Freakin' Muir Pod. Lace up those boots and sling on the pack for a romp through trails, short and long. With your host and Renaissance man, Doc. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags and hiker trash. I'm Doc, and this is the John Freakin' Muir Pod. Let's start off with a reminder. If you are enjoying the podcast, take just a minute, help us out. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not enjoying the pod, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. Well, it has been another incredible season, and I've had a chance to talk to all kinds of people doing all kinds of amazing things out there. To cap off season 4, we had to plan something big, right? And we did. Today's guest has an incredible story that I think everyone is going to enjoy. It is my pleasure to welcome to the John Freakin' Muir studio, author, podcaster, and superhuman, Rob Pope. How's it going, Rob?
You sure you're talking about the right fella? Like, so I've done the author and the podcast today. I'm not sure about the superhuman bit, though. I'm feeling all right, though, mate. Good.
Well, you are I say podcaster. You're the host of a podcast for Red Bull called How to Be Superhuman.
I indeed, yeah, exactly. And so basically, it's just an excuse for me to steal secrets from people. And if anybody wants to listen to that, if they've got time after listening to yours, because obviously that's the main priority, they'd be more than welcome to come along.
Well, talking to another podcaster, especially one who is doing a podcast for Red Bull, I'm a bit intimidated already.
You don't need to be, mate. I am merely a vessel for their production genius. Everyone's just like, oh my God, mate, it's so polished. Like, how do you do it? And I just turn up and ask some questions and they do it. So I'm quite lucky.
Nice. I wish I had that kind of support. I've been able to wrangle in one intern. And other than that, it's a one-man show, which is a lot of fun, doing everything, producing the episodes, writing the episodes, talking to folks. It's been a great ride.
I'm sure it is, man. I'm sure your intern's got far more technical wizardry than I have. So, you'll be fine.
All right. Now, if people are listening in, they're saying, hey, Rob doesn't sound like he's from Wisconsin. Rob, where are you calling in from today?
I'm from Liverpool, England, home of the Beatles.
Home of the Beatles, that's right.
Judge my musical taste behind me. I think that might be Revolver up there. So
nice. And I'm talking to you from Southern California. It is about 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. What time is it over in Liverpool right now?
It is 4 p.m. on a pretty nice September evening, actually. Although obviously we're very sad. You're lucky I'm not in the queue.
Yeah, that's right. My condolences to you and your country on the passing of the Queen. What a monarch who was there for 67 years, 70 years?
70 years, yeah.
70 years.
By Louis the 14th, but he started when he was 4. So, that was a hell of a flyer out of the blocks he took, wasn't it? So. Yeah. Now, I know I saw David Beckham was in line for 12 hours, at least 12 hours yesterday. What an absolute hero. He's put a lot of celebs to shame. A lot of other celebs actually just went through this VIP door. And so I'm sure they're feeling very silly today. But I was actually just saying, I know we got better things to talk about and stuff, but she probably is maybe the most important person in British history, just because the crazy stuff that's happened since 1952 to the present day. But I'm actually going to drive about 200 miles down to Windsor on Monday with my little girl, because I just think it's important that she's, there's things that are important in life, and whether you believe in the monarchy or not, this is real history. So we're going to take the trip down we're going to watch The Last Mile. So that'll be pretty deep, I imagine. Yeah. What an incredible experience for your daughter. Hopefully we won't cry. I'm more likely to than her.
How old is your daughter?
She is 4, so she's just started the first year of school. So she gets it. She is a bit sad. And she keeps asking me, has the Queen died yet? And I was just like, she's died a few days ago, because it's still on telly all the time. She thinks she's just in the final throes. So, it might hit her worse when she realizes that's it.
Right. Okay. Hey, Rob, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before?
I have, mate. Yeah, exactly. I'm obviously sort of a fairly dead ringer for Mike Wardian, maybe not quite as quick as him, but I enjoyed his episode.
Nice, because we're going to talk a little bit later about the Gump run, and Mike Wardian just finished a run across the country as well.
He did, and I'm sure he didn't really need my help, but very flatteringly, he did contact me in advance and asked for a few tips, and so, like I said, the main thing I was just saying to him, which, the guy's always got a smile on his face anyway, is just enjoy it and don't go too quick, because especially for him, with it being, a dream to go from like the West Coast to his home, which is pretty sweet. You know, who knows whether he could have had a pop at Pete's record if he went for it, because they're both sort of excellent athletes. But, I just said, just go slower. Like 50 miles a day is like an absolute sweet spot. Any more than that, you're just really struggling to actually take time to say hi to people, and some days I would just sit on the side of the highway, eating a sort of a Subway or something like that, watching the traffic go by, and it was great. So I'm not sure how much of that he did, but I hope he got the opportunity to do it at least a bit.
Nice. Yeah, Wardian is superhuman, and I'm realizing as I'm talking to you, you're giving advice to just go 50 miles a day. You definitely fit in the superhuman category. I don't drive 50 miles a day, let alone run for 50 miles.
Yeah, the main thing is though, like sort of, I think a lot of people are capable of it. Sort of, I think sort of everybody. The main sort of point of the Red Bull podcast, yeah, we had like Killian Jornet on, like, so somebody who just goes, I think we all agree that he is superhuman. But we had a lot of people on who were just like sort of regular Joes who just set out, one day with an idea and like sort of stuck at it. And it proved that, if we really do sort of, keep our nose to the grindstone, we're capable of surprising ourselves. We really are.
Yeah, I think the key is persistence. I mean, if you grab onto it like a dog with a bone and just stick with it no matter what, I mean, that's going to lead to some superhuman results.
Yeah. I just literally got back from the gym for the first time in about, I don't know, a year. Because like sort of I'm a little bit sort of injured at the moment, so I thought I need to get some like whole body fitness, sort of hey, maybe like one day I'm not going to really be doing much running, so I may as well be useful at things. And my God, I'm so weak. I'm like, I never used to lift much, but like I'm lifting about sort of 60% of what I did when I was 16. And I was just like, this is so embarrassing, and I was just seeing people in the gym who were like absolutely ripped. And then I just thought, well, no, hang on, like sort of, this is the whole epitome. This is what I'm saying, like sort of, it is a question of just going, well, you can do it. You were doing it when you were 16, so you can certainly do it now. And so I'm going to try and see if I can get a bit stronger, maybe not get bigger. And then when I'm not injured, I'll be able to, sort of run and be a bit more injury proof.
Rob, we had a very similar experience because we had this tremendous heat wave in Southern California that lasted like 2 weeks. We had temperatures of, 110, 112 degrees Fahrenheit for multiple days in a row. And even in the morning, it was, I would do my running in the morning and I couldn't because it was already 80 plus degrees. And I don't run in that situation. So, 2 weeks with basically no physical exercise, I got out again this morning and I'm thinking the same exact thing. Oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. I'm not going fast. I'm not going far. All of my fitness is gone. But you know what? I can build back up to it.
Well, the whole thing is just, beat yesterday or beat your last time out, isn't it? Just that slow sort of, pushing the rock up the hill, and obviously if you let go of it for a bit, it will roll back down. But, you've got it up there before, you'll get it up again.
Oh, there's our first Sisyphus reference in the podcast for in 4 seasons. That's the first one. So congratulations.
Yeah, excellent. You said you were holding up the big guns for episode 200, mate. I'm full of them.
All right. Well, hey, I'm glad you had a chance to listen to an episode because you are familiar with the format of the podcast. We've got a segment towards the end called the Pro Tip Insight of the Week. That's where I will turn to you, Rob, and I'll ask you to share some wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. So be on the lookout for that. Okay. Hey, now there is a unique American tradition of assigning trail names to folks who are out there on the long through hikes. And so I've had the chance to talk to a number of people with some very interesting trail names. I talked to a young lady last week who had the trail name of Ballsack because she carried 2 tennis balls in a sock to help massage her feet and legs at the end of a long day of through hiking. So have you picked up a trail name or a nickname along the way, or are you just strictly Rob?
Well, sort of, I reckon I would be called the Donut King. You know, sort of a lot of ultra runners seem to have like a lot of, sort of like wacky sort of names. Like sort of, I met sort of, a few along the way. And so I met the Peacock in Badwater. And I just thought that's a great trail name. I thought, what would I be? And my approach to nutrition certainly, I'm not even going to blame it on the run. My approach to nutrition in life is very sketchy, and I think donuts are the ultimate ultra food. So I will be the Donut King. You know, I'll sit on a massive throne of donuts, and you know there'll be wars fought to try and see who can become the new Donut King.
Nice. That warms my heart to hear you say that, because I always feel guilty. I'm talking to people usually who, are incredible athletes, and they treat their body like it's a temple. They're eating, very select foods. And it just makes me feel better about myself to hear you talk about the glory of donuts.
Like this won't make any sort of, you'll know exactly what kind of volume this is, but like being European, sort of, unfortunately British after that stupid vote, but like being European, we're used to a lot of like liters and things like that. And so I was sitting in a gas station. Where would this have been? Oh wow, this probably would have been in Idaho, actually. Yeah, it was in Idaho. And I was eating sort of my second of two donuts, and then I was drinking this massive Pepsi. And I'll turn the measurements around. It was 1.8 liters, and so I was just like, well, how much is this? And so I looked it up, and yeah, it was a 44-ounce Pepsi I was drinking. So I had the last 2 sips of it, and then just got up and carried on running.
That right there, that's fuel. That's good stuff. And as you're talking about sitting on a mountain of donuts, a throne of donuts, I'm thinking of Game of Thrones, and you've got the King's Landing and the swords, the throne of swords, and the King in the North, and all kinds of. I'm envisioning you in Liverpool sitting on your throne of donuts. Great image.
In Liverpool, it's usually much more chips and sausage, but hey, like sort of, we don't really have Dunkin' much over here, even though they're, I think, an official club sponsor of my soccer team, Liverpool FC. So I have to make do with some inferior products, but I make do.
You know what? When I retire, maybe I should move over to the UK and start a donut shop business. You think that would take off?
It would do well. You'd have one customer at least.
All right. Well, let's get to our
anecdote. Actually,
you go ahead. Yeah.
Anecdote. I was in just past New Johnsonville in Tennessee, and I went to I was just running through this sort of small town, and I ran past a place called Tito's Donuts, and the chap who ran it knew I was coming, and he came out and he gave me an absolute massive box of donuts, 6 donuts in it. And he was just like, how long do they last you? And I just said, well, donuts go off quickly, so I'll try and get rid of them by the end of the day. I did.
Nice. All right. Hey, let's get to our first segment.
The Must Bring Gear Review.
Now, if you're wondering, that's my daughter, Half Calf, who is raised in Southern California, but she likes to pretend that she's British sometimes. And you're going to hear her try to be British with these introductions. They get progressively worse. I'm just going to warn you. Okay, so this feature we've been doing this season is the Must Bring Gear Review, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. And here's how it works: if you were to let a stranger pack your kit with pretty much generic gear for a multi-day run or multi-week run, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? And if you've got a particular brand for that specific piece of gear, even better. So, Donut King, what is your must-bring piece of gear?
Well, sort of quick question first. Am I running in my normal sort of guise? Because that would mean I've got a stroller, which means I might be able to have something a bit bulkier than usual.
Hey, it's your run, so you tell me. You're pushing a stroller. Yeah. Tell me what's in that stroller.
Well, when I was pushing the stroller, I'd have, because of course this is me being completely self-sufficient, sort of apart from what I could get in sort of shops, and so I'd had a three-wheel baby jogger stroller with a big hold all in that would contain all my clothes. On the back, I would have like a small waist pack that I would like take off. That'd have my valuables and sort of chargers in, if I was ever going into a store and they wouldn't let the stroller come in. Then underneath, I'd have a spare pair of shoes, like, my food, and my water would be on like the little footrest. But my piece of gear that I found was most useful, and I should have used it more, was actually a tiger tail massage stick. Because like, obviously when you're running like these long, slow distances, you're not really striding out. You're also really tired at the end of the day and you can't be bothered stretching. So just having that massage stick was really useful. But also it served as a handy weapon when chased by packs of stray dogs. And so I never actually got to make contact with any of them, but it was good to wave around when they started charging you and biting at you. So, any piece of gear that has got like sort of multifunctional ability is a good one in my book, But a few things that I just found were great on the run. So I had the REI flash mat. And I find that was like really, really comfy when I was staying. I'm trying to think of gear that isn't like sort of British based. I had a Marmot sleeping bag. That was really good. It went down to like -1 and really served me well. And I guess something that was actually really, really good was just sort of massive big ponchos, because they would go over me and then over the handlebars of the stroller, so they would stop everything from getting soaked.
Nice. Now we covered a lot of ground right there. I got some follow-up questions. We have to unpack some of this. Cool. All right. First, you're pushing a stroller. Anybody ever confuse you thinking that you had a baby in that stroller and they wanted to see the baby?
Oh my God, absolutely. Well, here's two questions for you. Name the two states where I had the hottest temperature and the coldest temperature. You start with the hottest first.
Were you going, so you went east, west? Did you have
east, west, west, east?
Yeah, that's right. Did you say, was it a northern part of the country or southern part of the country?
So Mobile, Alabama, to Santa Monica, California, to Port Clyde in Maine, to Bandon Beach in Oregon, but via North Dakota and Montana. So I went through Glacier National Park, which still might be the most beautiful place I've ever been to, and a place in Southern California, which we might discuss later. Then to San Francisco, across again to Beaufort in South Carolina, and then back to Flagstaff, up to Kayenta, and a certain place where a Mr. Gump decided he was tired and went home.
Okay. Yes, that's a lot of different directions. I'm going to guess for hottest.
Just go off the wall, because you're not going to get it right.
I'm not going to get it right. Okay, I was going to guess for hottest, I was going to say maybe Nevada or Texas.
Well, when I ran through Death Valley, it snowed, which is a pretty unique experience. So hottest was actually, there was probably a few of them where it topped out sort of over 110, but like sort of one where I knew it was over 110 was in North Dakota. And then the coldest was actually in Alabama. And it got down to -1 Fahrenheit, that is, and that day I had the decision whether I was going to run 62 miles, which was pretty much as far as I would ever go on the run, or 15 miles. And once I knew sort of, because that was basically just where I had places to stay that night, because it was going to be so cold, there was no camping. And I decided I was going to do 15. So I had the glory of getting out of my hotel room around sort of 10:30 in the morning rather than around 7 or 8. And it was still probably about, I don't know, maybe about 5-6 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was pushing my stroller up when I heard the telltale. There's only ever one blare on the siren, isn't it? Woo! And I was just like, okay. I turned around and I thought, I always headed these things off. And I went, hello, officer. And he went, hello, son. And I was just like, did you get a call about a lady pushing a baby down the highway? And he went, sure did. And he went, why is it always the lady? He goes, son, you ain't going to get no man pushing a stroller down the highway in Alabama. And that happened a few times. But all my brushes with the law, apart from one, were like just incredible. You know, like ranging from like a trooper in Oregon who pulled me over so we could get a photo for the Oregon State Police Facebook, through to the guy who I did have a bad experience with, me seeing him later in the day and me asking him, could I set foot on a bit of a road that I wasn't allowed to set foot on? I knew that because he'd already told me to get off. And I had to crawl through like poison ivy and climb a 50-foot rock face to actually get back to a road, chest high, wade through water. This is on a 101 in California, and we all know that California troopers can be hard asses, you know, and so this one was. But he redeemed himself by the next day. He went, son, if I don't see it, it didn't happen.
You know what I love about those stories is you delivered the first one with an Alabama accent and you delivered the second one with a Southern California accent. That was spot on.
I was worried about the California one, man. That's very sketchy, and I apologize. I might quit while I'm ahead.
That's great. That's great. And hang on, I just drew a blank. I'm gonna have to edit this part out. Hang on.
We were on the stroller, weren't we?
Yeah, and so that is hilarious that the trooper said you're not going to find a man out here pushing a stroller, pushing a baby in this kind of weather. That was crazy.
I had one trooper in Georgia said I had very nice legs. He said I had strong muscles, and so I just thought that's not the remark I expected to come out of a Georgian state trooper. But hey, you know, like, cheers, man.
Right. Now, you mentioned pack of dogs and swinging that tiger tail stick, never making contact. But was that a common occurrence? How many times did you get chased by packs of stray dogs?
Well, sort of, it happened. The dog that I was chased most by happened to be a Chihuahua. You know, sort of, there seemed to be lots of rabid Chihuahuas on the way. But like, sort of, I saw in fact, once I ran past, I think this was in Tennessee. There was a sign on the gate saying, you know, sort of, if you come in here, watch out for Jesus. And I wasn't sure whether Jesus was the Chihuahua that was trying to wriggle through a hole in the fence, or the big bull terrier that was standing on its kennel that was higher than the fence. And I just thought, I don't fancy either of them being Jesus, so I carried on my way. But you would see, unfortunately, a lot of stray dogs, including some with collars, you know, just dead at the side of the road. And like, I'm a veterinarian by like trade, and so that was tough for me. But I met some people in Oklahoma who said, like, watch out for Tennessee because there are lots of packs of stray dogs around. And I was really worried about that, especially because I've been supported by my girlfriend in an RV up until Tennessee. And at that point, I went solo, and I was walking straight running with the torn quad at this point. So I couldn't be bothered with stray dogs. And I got to my very last full day in Tennessee before I was chased by one. And like, these guys, 3 of them were intense. And as they were coming after me, I would turn around and be like, go on, get, you know, and so they would do it for a bit. And then I suddenly just heard like the claws behind me that showed a change up in gear. And this one flew at me, you know, so I basically just wheeled my stroller around. He like bounced off the side of it and then got the tiger tail out. And I was like, you know, don't come here. And he thought better of it, but I still walked with the stroller behind me for the next mile or so. But I did actually rescue a stray dog as well. We were in Arkansas. And my eyes aren't great. And I thought it was a coyote originally, but then, of course, they just scarper as soon as you see him. Then I thought it was a deer. And as I got up close to it, it was a stray dog. And so I ended up running 5 miles with it. And through like the good grace of the people in the town, we got into basically a vet's, then to an animal shelter. And that dog now lives happily in Massachusetts. And she's called Hope, in honor of New Hope, where we found her.
Oh, that's a great story. That's fantastic. Now, I wonder if anybody called the police station to let them know that a woman was using a stroller to fend off a pack of stray dogs, endangering the baby in the stroller.
Yeah, or getting done for animal cruelty.
Right. All right. Hey, let's move on to our next segment.
It's the hiking pole.
Now, this is a hiking pole, and it's spelled P-O-L-L. Not like the item you carry on a hike in your hand, P-O-L-E. This is a 7-question survey. It's going to help me determine your level of sanity. And despite it being called the hiking pole, this has nothing to do with anything related to hiking. These are some of the big questions that we wrestle with over here in the States. I wanted to get your perspective over in the UK on these issues to see if you also have these big questions that you deal with over there. You ready for this?
As I'll ever be.
Okay, and you don't know what questions I'm going to ask. You haven't seen these questions.
I haven't got a clue.
Okay,
I'm just hoping that they're not too incriminating.
Okay, nervous?
Extremely.
Okay, now I have to tell you that at the end of this, I'm gonna give you a score based on 0 to 100, a scale of 0 to 100, with 100 being completely sane, which we know you're not gonna get there, and 0 being completely insane. How would your friends and family rate you? What score would they give you if I asked them how sane is Rob?
Low 30s, I would say.
Low 30s, like a cool morning in Georgia.
Exactly, and that's probably just to my face. God knows what they'd say behind my back.
Anybody who's gone east west west east east west west east east west across the U.S. on a single run, I mean, that's an automatic 40-point deduction. So I mean, your highest possible score today, Rob, is 60.
Superb.
Okay, here we go. Question number 1. One of the big questions: does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
You had to think about that one. There was some thought given into that.
One of the main things is I'm a little bit of a pizza noob because I'm allergic to cheese. So I do have cheese like sort of free pizzas, but I just couldn't imagine. So I'm trying to think I've never had it on a pizza. So that means my automatic response is no. I think pineapple should stay in Chinese food.
Okay. All right. Question number 2. Do you roll your toilet paper over or under?
Over in my own house, under in other people's house, just to freak them out.
So if you're sitting on the throne, not the donut throne, but if you're sitting on the throne in a friend's house and they've got it going over, you switch it for them.
Yeah.
Throw them off. That's ingenious. I'm gonna have to try that. All right. Question 3. I know you said you're a vet. Do you prefer cats or dogs in terms of ownership?
Oh, cats, because I'm lazy.
They are a bit self-sufficient, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Like, sort of, I'm out and about too much, sort of, and if I've got a cat flap and I've got a big sort of bucket of water there, like, sort of, I consider it evolution if my cat's there when I come back home.
Okay. Question number 4. Do you use the Oxford comma?
No, unless it's a Vampire Weekend song.
Explain, please.
They've got a song called Oxford Comma. Now, I'm not a big one for the lyrics, so I might be horrendously embarrassing myself in front of Vampire Weekend fans here, but it is a good song. But yeah, no, I think my ands should remain unadulterated. I'm pretty old school, and obviously having recently written a book, I sent the manuscript off, and it was not like ghostwritten. It was all me, and it was very big. As you can tell, I like to go on a bit, so people had to condense it. And when it came back, I was horrified to see that people were starting sentences with but and because, and I'm just like, absolutely not. And like, so you can't do that. And it's just like, that's now accepted written speech. And so I don't know, maybe I'm a bit antiquated, but Oxford comma, not for me.
Sentences I never thought I'd hear when I got out of bed in the morning. An example would be, I think my ands should remain unadulterated. That just, I never foresaw that sequence of words.
I think it's the first time I've ever said it. So, every day's a school day, isn't it?
That is spectacular. All right. Question number, what are we on? 5? Yes. Question 5. Yeah. Netflix or YouTube?
Netflix, because I don't know, because my missus got subscriptions to both. Oh, this is a real tough one. YouTube, because if my missus didn't pay for either of them, I'm too tight to pay for either of them. So I would take ad-ridden YouTube.
Comes down to the financial side.
Exactly, man. So money I spend on YouTube could be getting spent on beer or donuts. So
you're my new hero. All right. You are the podcast host of How to Be Superhuman. What is the better superpower? Invisibility or flying?
Invisibility.
What would
Basically,
you do if you were invisible? If you had that superpower?
there's a number of embarrassing situations I would have gotten myself out of, certainly. Actually, so I was going to say, when I was getting chased by like a really scary dude in upstate New York, it would have been great to have been invisible, but then I suppose it would have been quite handy to have flown as well. But yeah, invisible's good. I get myself into too much trouble.
If we all just had that ring that Frodo had, you just slip that ring on and slip away.
As long as it didn't make you get a lower score on this insanity scale.
All right. Question number 7. If there was a time machine, if we had a time machine, but it could only go 100 years in the past or 100 years in the future, which direction would you go?
I'd want some value, and I would go in the past. I'd probably be able to set some pretty amazing FKTs. Yeah.
That's right. You'd be ahead of the curve. All right. Hey, let me do some quick math here. Gotta carry the 5 and divide by 3 and multiply by pi. And we're going to adjust for the temperature on a snowy day in Death Valley. And I come out with a score of 48, a bit higher than I expected.
Oh, fair dues. Yeah. Like, so, well, I'm pretty chuffed because 12's my lucky number. So, like, sort of 4 complete crossings times 12. I did get lucky. So happy days.
Lucky number 12. You have to tell me why that is your lucky number.
I think there's just been lots of sort of because it's been so forged for a long time. There'd been lots of sort of serendipitous things I think that happened. Sort of maybe it was my first ever like sort of raffle ticket win or something. I wish I had a cool story for this one. I need to dig into it myself.
Okay. Hey, before we get too far down the trail, let's back up a little bit. Before we go to break, give us a quick thumbnail sketch of your background, where you grew up, what kinds of sports and hobbies you played as a kid, and how did you get involved in the running cult?
So I, just like Forrest, was raised by a single mom, sort of in Liverpool, and so we were never rich, but like sort of my mom would always work to sort of put food on the table, and sort of got me to a school where they had a cross country team. And as it happened, the next school I went to is very unusual in Liverpool for schools not to play soccer as the main sport. And my school was either cross country or rugby. And I'm 5'7", weigh 145 pounds. Rugby is not my sort of vibe. So did cross country, was pretty good. It was county representative, but never of the level that I didn't want to put the work into, to get to, sort of national level or anything like that. I just enjoyed my running. Went to uni, played soccer because it was much more social, and there were many more girls who were interested in the football boys than the running team. It was actually only when I moved to Australia. I'd run a few marathons previously, and I was reasonable, sort of in terms of what these crazy numbers mean. And I joined an athletics club just so I could get more friends, because I didn't want to be a 35-year-old English person who thought they were great at football, attracting all the vicious tackles, So joined this club, got a lot better, and managed to actually get a state representation for Victoria, because I was there for 3 years. Ran in the Australian Marathon Championships, in the Sydney Marathon, and came 10th. Now, apparently, that was an IAAF gold race, and not only did come in 10th and being beaten by only Kenyan and Japanese mean I was now an English Australian marathon champion. So I got a phone call later that day telling me that I'd qualified for the Olympics, because that's the IAAF rules. And if basically the guys who were looking to go for times in Chicago and Berlin didn't get the qualifying time, would I consider switching nationality? And the very short answer was yes, coupled by me singing Waltz to Matilda. And it was not long after that I moved back to the UK, and I thought, hey, maybe I got this wrong when I was 14. Maybe I should have trained hard. tried to train a lot harder, but my job that I moved back for just wasn't possible. And so I packed that job in and just dusted the stroller off and thought, I wonder how much a flight to Houston is.
Wow, what a story. Now I'm struck. It always so it comes down to finances earlier, and now we're talking about difference between cross country and soccer and the lack of cross country groupies out there, right? And so
yeah, I know, like the world's gone wrong, you know. I might have had one groupie when I was in Morristown in Tennessee. I'd booked a hotel earlier that day, but somebody pulled alongside me and they said, "Oh, we've been following you. Would you like to stay at our place tonight?" And I said, "Well, if I can cancel this hotel room, then yeah, great." And I was waiting for this guy to come and pick me up later when two really gorgeous girls pulled up in a Ford Mustang, and they were just like, "Hey, what are you doing, sweetie?" You know, I'm just like running across America. And they're like, "Oh my God, you know, so do you need anything? Like, you got somewhere to stay?" And I was just thinking, oh my God, if I was single and I like hadn't already accepted the thing, you know. But she gave me a card and wrote a phone number. I said, "If you need anything, just call me." And I was just like, oh wow, this is almost like a Bruce Springsteen song, and I'm going to walk away from it. But you know, Bruce would walk away back to his own girl, so that's what I do.
Oh, the accents are classic. These are just, this is good stuff. All right. Hey, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna talk a little bit about your podcast, and I want to hear a lot more about your run across America. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We are talking to Rob Pope, aka the Donut King. And we've heard a little bit about his how he got involved in the running cult, and I want to talk a little bit now about your Red Bull podcast and how to be superhuman. And I have to imagine you've talked to some pretty amazing people. Do you have any maybe favorite guests or some highlights you want to share?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I'll obviously mention some of the great runners that we've had on. Like, so we've had like Camille Herron on, Jasmine Paris, Kilian Jornet, you know, sort of. But some of the people who I was most fascinated were just like sort of people who were very like normal Joes who sort of basically recreated the whole meaning of the word superhuman to be above human. And because everyone just sort of says, well, oh, well, you're just a normal guy, but we can all ascend above that level if we go to it. And in fact, we had a number of guests who'd overcome like huge disabilities. Like Ed Jackson, who paralyzed himself in a diving accident and has like since like climbed sort of, you know, Kilimanjaro. And one of my personal favorites was a guy called Gabe Cordell, who we mentioned Netflix before. So that he was on the Netflix film called Roll With It. And what he did basically, he was an actor. And he had a bit of a substance habit. And on the way to an interview, he had like a car crash that paralyzed him sort of above the waist. And he became the first person to actually roll, not a race wheelchair, but a standard wheelchair across the States. And there were a number of roads where he went on the same path as me. And I reached the 3,000 mile mark on mine. It was on my second leg. Heading up towards Globe, Arizona. And halfway up that hill was the 3,000 mile mark. And I thought, let's stop here for the night. I was a bit tired. And like Gabe was rolling this wheelchair up that, you know, sort of massive blisters. And he was not an athlete, you know, and so he was incredible. And sort of to see like sort of, you know, like we've had like some excellent climbers like Sasha DeJulian, but also like Karen Dark, who was a British Paralympian. And she managed to climb El Capitan just using her arms. So basically, sort of on a hoist up there, you know. And so, someone who's just coming back from the gym, and I was struggling to activate my power steering. I'm just thinking, you know, the strength of will of these people. Had my favorite triathlete, Tim Don, who this is a brilliant story, right? You know, some runners like you will always surprise yourself at one point in your running career. And Tim was, he was in, I think it might have been the Brazil Ironman. and he had a great swim leg, and he had like a really good sort of bike as well. And he was in the marathon. His coach says to him, Tim, if you manage to do a 2:45 marathon, you're going to break the record. And he's like, okay, great. And he's just like, what record? And he's like, the world record. And it's just like, oh my God. And he goes through and he breaks the world record. And his pod is extremely interesting because not long after that, he had an accident where he broke his neck in a training ride, sort of from Kona, and had to have a halo screwed into his skull to stabilize his neck and to allow it to heal. And he's gone on to complete Ironman after that. And so, like, wow. I know, like, these days on the news, we often get a lot of the negative stories, and, like, you know, it's easy to walk away sometimes and think, you know, people are really crap, but, you know, there's such a minority. But the best thing is like, people are amazing. We're amazing. You know, there's people out there now who are going to do something next year that we'll not even believe possible, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, people are amazing. The people that I've talked to have just been, you know, sensational. And we talk about outdoor adventure, but really it's the stories behind the people. It's more of a human interest podcast, because I just love hearing about people's background, how they got involved, and some of the stories of the things they're doing out there. And I've got a great candidate for your podcast. Maybe you can sell this to Red Bull. He just set the FKT on the John Muir Trail. He did 220 miles in the Sierras in 72 hours and 47 minutes. Jeff Garmire. Have you heard of Jeff Garmire?
Incredible. 73 miles a day. I know the name, but don't know him personally. But yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's a Triple Crown. He did the calendar year Triple Crown. So he did the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the PCT in one calendar year. He's got some other incredible accomplishments to his credit as well. He's participated in the Barkley Marathons. Have you heard of the Barkleys?
I have indeed, mate. I have indeed.
Yeah. Have you participated? Have you participated in the Barkleys?
I have not, my man. Yeah, like, so it's a bit mental, isn't it? Never say never.
It is very mental. Yes, it is. That is one of the quirkiest, strangest, most incredible events you're going to find out there.
I am I think, well, this is definitely a contrived record. I've not done the Triple Crown, but I kind of have done the Triple Crown. So this is basically, well, certainly it was actually not long ago. So, you know, I started the run 6 years and 2 days ago. And so the 2017 was a huge year for me. Like, I believe that I managed to run the second most miles of anyone ever that year. Certainly the most in 2017, that's for sure. But in doing so, I became the first person to go three times across the States in a calendar year. So that means I would have crossed all of those 3 trails 3 times each.
That's right. That's right.
But I'm not like in a game of poker. I'm not pushing that as a superior hand, you know. Sort of. I would love to do the calendar sort of like Triple Crown, but as with all these huge distance undertakings, even if you think you can do it, you're at the mercy of so many factors. Yourself, right. Outside factors like the weather, you know, finances, one stray boulder just causing you to roll your ankle, and that's it, you know. So anyone who's managed to complete that in a year, and I know that it wouldn't have been plain sailing for him either. Like, I bet he's had to overcome some huge challenges, you know, then. So hats off to him.
Yeah, excuse me. One of my favorite stories with Jeff is that on one of his hikes, he saw a pair of moose antlers laying in the brush alongside the trail, and he was close to a town. He thought, "Oh, this is great. I'm gonna take these and I'll mail them back to myself, and we'll get those on the wall or something." And he reached down to pick up the moose antlers and discovered they were still attached to a fully grown bull moose, who then proceeded to chase him around.
What? No way, man. I had a fairly similar thing, but not like severe. I didn't actually get hold of him. I was going down this trail. Well, actually, let's talk about trails. The Coeur d'Alene in Idaho. It's just like, oh my God. Like, I don't know if you can see that. I've just said Coeur d'Alene, and like the actual hairs on my arms have stood up because it's so beautiful. And most of my run was on the road. So whenever I was getting like, something like a glorious bit of trail like that, sort of, or like the Katy Trail in Missouri, it was just so perfect. And I likened it to being like in Scotland on steroids, so that's Scotland rather than me on steroids, by the way. And so I was walking down, I've already said about my dodgy eyes. So I thought I saw this horse in front of me on the trail and it was like limping. And I thought, oh, that's not limping, that's just walking funny. Oh God, it's a moose. So I would stay about 200 yards behind this moose, and every now and again it would look over at me. Now I couldn't see if it had antlers or not because my acuity is not that good. Now suddenly a cyclist comes in the opposite direction, and then spooks the moose, who then comes hurtling towards me, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And so I'd left my bear spray in the RV at that point because Nadine had come back out to support me. And so I was just like, what do we do? Next thing is to hide behind a tree, so they can't hit you. And so I couldn't get behind a tree because there was a bramble bush there. So I just basically stood in front of the tree and wrapped myself around it, thinking he's not surely going to hit the tree. And I closed my eyes as he got about 15 yards away, and just heard like crashing of branches as his antlers basically were catching the bushes next to me. And he just went down to the sides to the river. And tell you what, I've never felt so alive after that. And I was listening to the Proclaimers as I was going along, and it was just like the perfect day. Like, never mind, HD. This is 4K Ultra HD life. I'd like sort of seen. But if I'd had my eyes open, I'd have seen my life flash before me. But yeah, those things are scary, man.
What a great image. You on the front side of a tree, wrapping your arms around backwards and closing your eyes and just hoping for the best.
Yeah, oh, it would have just made an absolute mess out of me. But so, since we're talking about the run, can I exit stage left very briefly for about 5-10 seconds?
Absolutely. Yes.
It would be worth it.
Okay, I'm waiting.
He said.
For those of you listening, he's now exited the room. I anticipate he's grabbing something. He's gonna bring it back to show me. Here he comes.
Right. First rule of show business: give the people what they want.
Nice. Oh yes, now he's in character. He's in character. Very good. Lean closer in. What's it say on the hat?
That's the Bubba Gump. Yeah,
Bubba Gump.
Shrimp Company. So this is
right.
Actually the OG cap. This is the one that I was running in, in the States a lot of the time. Not all the time, but you see, it's quite like a faded rose. And I thought that was there. So there's the grease stain where I would be regularly just sort of taking my hat off.
Uh-huh.
And I thought this was just sweat and repeated washing, but it's actually just the effect of the sun, because if you look inside,
yes,
look how red that is compared to that.
Yes, for those of you listening on the podcast and not watching on YouTube, the outside of the hat, the top of the hat is really faded, but underneath it's very bright red. So a lot of time out there on the sun, going back and forth across the country. And let's get to that. Let's talk about the run. What is the inspiration? What made you say, you know what, I think it'd be a good idea to emulate Forrest Gump and run across the United States of America several times?
Well, I sort of always wanted to do sort of a big run, and the UK's iconic one is Land's End John O'Groats, or the other way around. And I became interested in running across America probably about 16 years ago, and I read a book called Running Across America, which kind of does what it says on the tin, by an English guy called Nick Baldock. And the way he, as an outsider, described going across the country was unbelievable, because for Land's End John O'Groats, I know all of these places. And I think maybe the way a European or an Australian sort of would see the States, so I'd be running through a really small Midwest town and go, oh my God, this is perfect. Whereas it might not resonate as much with someone who's grew up in a town like that. And so I talk a good game, and so I thought, right, I'm going to do this. And I planned the route, and I was originally going to go from Long Beach, California to Long Beach, New York, and call it the long run home, but life got in the way. And basically it took, 10 more years before I actually got round to doing it. Now, when I emailed this chap, Nick Baldock, in like 2009 or something like that, the title of the email was called Forrest Gump 2. Because, if anyone thinks about like sort of long distance running, like so they think about Forrest. And actually, when I was up in like sort of like North Dakota and Montana, I asked about sort of 200 people, can you name me a long distance runner, an American long distance runner? And in the poll, sort of Steve Prefontaine came second. Who came? O.J. Simpson came third, which I thought was brilliant. Everybody thought that was quite funny. But by like far, Forrest Gump, sort of was up there. And then so everybody knows, some of the landmarks he hit: Santa Monica Pier, the lighthouse in Maine, Glacier National Park. And somebody had researched his route and picking all these landmarks out and mostly taking it from a map that you see behind the newsreader when he's running across the Mississippi for the fourth time. So they reckoned it was 15,248 miles. And so I had this magical figure in my head, but to be honest, I knew that my chances of doing that were probably pretty small because of all these variables that you can't control. But I knew I was a reasonable runner, so I at least had that sort of, in my locker, which was nice. But my only real ambition was to actually just get across the country once. And so I thought, right, I'll start. But I can't start in Greenbow, Alabama, because it doesn't exist. They made it up for the film. So in the book, he's from Mobile. So I went from Mobile to Beulah Battery, where Bubba was from. Got my little bit of water from the Atlantic, and then headed to California and Santa Monica Pier. And I had the joy of running through the magical Joshua Tree National Park, where I listened to Joshua Tree by U2 on loop the whole way through. So it's 8.5 times, and that will get you from south to north, coming out at 29 Palms Way. And I just love that. We were actually there for Thanksgiving, so we had to camp in an RV. Actually, we didn't even get an RV park place. We stayed in a Walmart car park that night in the RV. And we had to go into the store to get some food and just watch the fights over giant teddy bears and plasma screen TVs, And I asked somebody what it was, and he said it's Black Friday. I'm just like, oh no, it's Thanksgiving Thursday, isn't it? And they were like, oh no, Black Friday starts early. It's just like, oh my God, And so once I got to Santa Monica, and even then I got a huge injury, and I got anterior tibial tendonitis in Houston, 400 miles in, ironically, where I'd landed to go to Mobile to start. So the psychological thing of going, I am not even a fifth of the way across the country here. I've got this injury, which by all rights should take me 6 to 8 weeks to get rid of. And I just ended up talking to a lady in a gas station about it. She was like behind the cash desk. And I gave her my handwritten social media card. It was the last one I had. And my brain, because your brains are evil things sometimes, just said to me, that's the last one you ever give out. And so I just literally broke down in tears, and she came round and gave me a massive hug. And I was just like, I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sweaty. You don't want to hug me. And she went, son, we're all sweaty down here. And I was just like, oh, that's so good. And I saw a physio who sorted me out a treat. And I am not making this up, I promise you. But I was in Houston, and my physio was called Whitney.
Oh, nice.
I only realized it after I had left. Otherwise, I would have made a big point about it. But yeah, I managed to get to Santa Monica. And after that, I was bomb-proof, because all I ever said was I was going to recreate Forrest Gump's run. Now, that meant running until I was tired and I could go home, or, I was broken, or I was like just, literally flat broke. So I just kept on going and kept going along this route, like on my little sort of, donut trail across the country. And the aim was to, obviously get to that point, and say those words, but I would never say the whole sentence in one go, because I knew it was almost a bit like saying Beetlejuice 3 times, that would be the end of it. And then, but so when I actually got to Kayenta and Highway 163, and I took that last left turn, and it's probably about 38 miles to the point then, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is actually happening, And so I said, like, some of it I was supported by my girlfriend, probably for about half of it, and my good friend Olivia. Then half of it I was self-supported with a Pram Solo, my stroller, named because I was looking like Chewbacca. The beard's a shadow of its former self now, because of course I did get the full marine buzz cut in a barbershop in Mobile, and the cutthroat shave on day one. And then apart from trimming the moustache to facilitate burger entry into my mouth, nothing else was touched until the end of the run. But Nadine managed to come out for the last 200 miles with our new baby as well. So
that is fantastic. I mean, I want to congratulate you on your commitment to authenticity. I mean, you started, I mean, you followed the route, you went to all the places that were depicted in the movie. You started on the date I believe he started on in the movie, correct? September 15th.
Exactly. Like, so I did a lot of research into it, and then there was actually another British guy who was trying to do the run at the same time, and he didn't know about me, but I knew about him, and I didn't want him to find out about me some other way. So I emailed him and said, hey man, I'm doing this, do you want to do it together? Because like otherwise it's going to be, sort of, I didn't back myself in a race situation. This guy had done like a huge 10K streak, like over like 2 years, and I just thought, oh, I don't want it to be stress. And he said, no, I'm definitely going to do it. Then when are you starting? I said, September the 15th. And he said, oh, why are you starting then? I said, well, that's the day that Forrest started. And he goes, no, he started on October the 1st, which is when I'm starting. And I said, oh, mate, you've made the sort of mistake here, because you're going from the copy of Time magazine that he featured on, which was dated October the 1st. But that was actually a couple of weeks after he was started, because he started on the same day that President Carter collapsed in a 10K race in Maryland, which was the 10th of the 15th of September 1979.
So did you make a friend through that conversation, or did you make an enemy?
I wouldn't say an enemy, but let's just say sort of I got an email from his publicist saying that maybe you should not visit the towns he's visiting, but then all the towns were already on my route. And so I just said, why don't we both just try our best? And, like, there's every chance that even though I'm starting, this guy, your guy's probably going to come past me, or I might not finish. And so I think it's best we just both do what we can and crack on.
Okay. Now, so for some of our listeners out there who may have missed this, there was a Star Wars reference. You mentioned Pram Solo and yourself as Chewbacca.
Yeah.
That's good. That's clever.
Because my beard was like sort of was getting very, very long at this point, and I had a huge music collection with me, and I did have the Star Wars soundtrack, and I would have my tunes playing on shuffle, unless I was in a real bad spot. If I was in a bad spot and I thought like that David Bowie could help me, sort of he would get selected, or AC/DC, I had a rule that I could never stop running if AC/DC were playing. Even if I was due a walking break, I'd have to run for another 3 minutes, And so one day the Star Wars music came on, and I knew it was there. And I was in upstate Washington, but in the east, where it was like, sort of all cornfields, and they'd recently been harvested. And the rolling hills looked like the dunes of Tatooine. And so at one point, sort of, I stood out on one of these hills as the sun was going down and put that.
Oh, nicely done. You're a man of many talents, Donut King.
I don't think John Williams is coming calling for me anytime soon to add a little bit of depth to the brass. But it was just great soundtracking. My life was so incredible because, of course, we talked about these lovely landscapes, but sometimes it was like, gritty urban environments. Like I listened to Bruce Springsteen and nothing but Bruce Springsteen running through New Jersey, because why would you not?
That's right. Now, you mentioned the psychological game that we play out there and the rules that you make, can't stop during an AC/DC song. What is more difficult? What was more difficult in your running across the USA multiple times? Was it the physical task, or was it the psychological aspect of doing it, the mental toughness that you had to commit to?
Yeah, like the mental side was tough, but like sort of I do have a naturally short attention span. So like and also a lot of things I had to, a lot of plates I had to keep spinning at that point. So the main thing was, I had to make sure where I was going to stay that night. Like I would never look at my bank balance, because like the whole thing up until like almost the very end was like self-funded, like sort of girlfriend and now wife. We'd like saved up about, like in US dollars, probably about $40,000, but the way the pound's gone, it's probably about $6 now. And so we were convinced when we would get to Santa Monica that and turn around, that someone would just go, "I'm sponsoring this," and we'd have a gold-plated like RV that was like sort of fueled with like sort of nitrous oxide, and we'd like zip across the country. But never happened. Never happened at the East Coast. Never happened in San Francisco. And so there was once when I was in it was Wisconsin, and I put my cash machine into a pin machine at the hotel, and they just said, "Oh, it's not working." And I went, "Oh, that's very strange. There's definitely money in it. I'll try this other card." Not working. And then I checked my balance. I had like $36, and I was just like, "Oh no." And so I ended up going to a bar. $36, it'll get you somewhere. And I didn't buy any beers that night. I got put up on someone's couch. I got sent off with an extra sort of $40 in my pocket. And then the next day, like sort of, I managed to get some money sent from a friend over and kept the show on the road. So the money was a mega stress, but then the body, because I was neither running fast nor slow, but I was always making steady progress. And it was a little bit like sort of, I don't know if like IndyCar's the same, but in Formula One, like the drivers are very rarely racing flat out, because if they do, they'll just rip up their tires, they'll burn through their fuel. And so I was having to just sort of monitor everything. I felt like I was this massive CPU. So I'd have a pain on the outside of my knee, and I'd be like, "Is that real? Okay, right, it is real. Let's see where it gets to." But then I was always monitoring an old injury. So that was tough. Like physical wise, eventually you adapt. And I'm sure like sort of Jeff's the same. Like sort of, I bet you the first few hills he took on whichever trail he started on would burn his quads up. And like at the end of the day, he would probably 3 days in, he'd be like, "There's no way I'm doing this." But like so after about like 3 to 4 weeks, and I know they say that habit forming is about 3 to 4 weeks, but maybe there's something physiological there as well, because it was the same with the run. Took me 3 to 4 weeks to get injured in Houston. I spoke to a guy in London called Chris Finnell, who's actually ran every London marathon ever, and has also run across the country with his friend Steve Pope, obviously me being Rob Pope, and there's a Rosie Swale Pope who's ran around the world, so something in the name.
And he said, a lot of running popes.
Exactly, I know. Like, so I don't know who get the black smoke from the Vatican if we all went for it. I think Rosie, she's been around the world. Give her the smoke, But Chris just said, you're running too fast, and these 3 to 4 weeks are instrumental. And then after that, like I come home from work these days, and I'm more tired than I am after than I was running 55 miles. Sort of in 100-degree heat. Like sort of leapfrogging from fast food venue to fast food venue just so I could get their aircon, But yeah, there was various points in the run where it was more physical and various more mental, But towards the end, it was certainly more mental. And I was never really lonely because I could speak to people on social. I would meet the wonderful people. And I know the audience for this, even though it's worldwide, is mostly sort of going to be in the States. But I just want to say a massive thank you. Maybe someone who who helped me on the run sort of is listening. And there's absolutely no way I would have got across the States without the help of people. And I know that these days, like the news that we get is like America's at each other's throats. It's red versus blue, sort of rich versus poor. But the massive thing that I got was that whatever your politics, whatever your race, whatever you're standing, the amount of kindness that was there, was just incredible. And so, yeah, that really helped. And the main mental struggle I had at the end was knowing that my now heavily pregnant girlfriend wasn't going to be able to be at the finish. And I was on the fifth leg, which I imagined was going to be like a glorious lap of honor, like sort of people high-fiving me and everything like that. But I was injured, I was broke, and I was lonely because Nadine wasn't going to be there. And with life, we always have these problems and we try and come up with complex solutions. There's no point normally. Come up with the simple one because they're the ones that work. And I thought, why am I sad? Nadine's not going to be at the end. What can you do? Make her be there at the end. Well, she can't come out because she can't fly because she's going to give birth. And I said, well, let's stop about maybe 200 miles before the end. Luckily, I got past the distance of 15,248. So if US immigration never let me back into the country again, which was a big worry, that, sort of at least done forest distance. And we flew back out as a family of three now to Flagstaff. And we were joined by like sort of friends, old and new. My old school friend from San Francisco who ran 150 miles with me in Texas. Sort of people who driven from Alabama and South Carolina to be at the end, And we got the forest finish, so we're like, sort of 30, 40 people sort of all running behind, And then obviously Nadine and B were there, and I got to do the most elaborate marriage proposal of all time. So
oh, epic. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Now, did you say the words that Forrest said before or after the marriage proposal?
So I got to the exact point. Now, a lot of people who get their photos taken at that point take it at the wrong spot. And so I was like cross-referencing satellite pictures to the exact location on the line. And we were originally going to film it but proper. And I had a friend who said, right, let's go out there the night before. We'll get the angles. And I said, absolutely no way. I said, I want to turn around and see those right. Is it Mesa or Mesa? Those big tabletop mountains. I should know this.
Mesa.
There we go. Neither Mesa. So I want to see those Mesa for the first time when I turn around. And so I did. And I just went, I'm pretty tired. I think I'll go home now. And then just walk through the crowd. And obviously somebody in the crowd did the epic line, now what are we supposed to do? And I was in the middle of the crowd at this point. And I said, well, come with me. I'm not finished yet. And everybody looked at me and just said, what? Is he going to go to the ocean? So I turned around and we jogged over to the back of where about another 40 or so people were waiting, including the state trooper who was telling the traffic to slow down. And I just thanked Nadine for everything. Got down on one knee. Probably really could have stayed there, done with not doing that because I struggled to get back up. And she did say yes. So peer pressure was a wonderful thing.
Nice. What an epic scene that must have been. And I want to tell you, you mentioned that maybe some of the people who helped you along the way are listening to this episode on the podcast. And I want to guarantee you that the two girls in the Mustang are definitely listening.
And they're like, oh, we should have been more persistent.
Now, so many people, to get to one place to another, they take a plane. Right. If they're going long distance, they're flying from LA to New York. I've always said, if you really want to see the country, if you want to learn about the country, drive across the country. I mean, you're going to see aspects of this country you weren't even aware of. Now, I have to believe that running across the country multiple times, you probably learned even more about the U.S. What did you learn about the U.S. through this experience?
Yeah. Well, to quote the late, great John McCain, always believe in the greatness of America, so there's always hope. No matter, when I thought I was down and out, somebody would come and, save my day, whether it was just with a smile or whether it was an offer of, some sort of assistance, But, obviously I realized it's clearly the most diverse country on earth, from landscape to people. I also found a few things that, maybe there's too much fear in this world. I was going through South Chicago, East Cleveland. I went into East Cleveland and I went to McDonald's. That waist pack I was telling you about before? Well, I actually had it on the back of my stroller. And these little sort of things that you do to just say, right, let's just see, let's test ourselves, but let's also test others. And there were a group of homeless guys outside, not with any food or anything like that. And I just said hello to them on the way in. And I thought, I'm leaving my waist pack there. So I had my phone in my hand anyway. So I just thought, I'm going to leave everything. So like me wallet, everything like was in the back of that. And I thought, didn't look back. And when I came out, nothing was touched. Absolutely just as it was. And I didn't say what I was doing. I just said hello to them on the way, and they didn't like sort of take a thing, you know. And so it just shows that, you know, this whole, you know, idea that everything, you know, of course some bad things happen, you know, and you have to be careful. But like I went through South Chicago and I saw a group of guys by a 7-Eleven, and they were typical, you know, sort of like jeans like down at the halfway down their ass, you know, and sort of like the bandanas on. And one of them sort of shouted like, "You run, Forrest, run!" And so I thought, I'm going to go over and say hello. And I think they were genuinely surprised when I went over. And we just chatted for about like sort of 10 minutes. And so I said to him, I sort of gained the trust at this point. And I said, is it as bad around here as they make out on the news? He goes, "Nah, man, we just tell the news crews like that just to keep the real bad people away." And so, and it's, you know, like sort of in the day, you got to realize that these are just people just getting by, different circumstances and stuff. But, you know, the main thing people got to do is just talk, because I could have seen them. I could have like judged them, stereotyped them, just got my head down and gone on. Those guys just think, look at that arrogant bugger just running through here. Like, so if he thinks he's better than us, and then that like fosters the divide. But like the difference between going through in a car and on foot, or, you know, like even just two wheels, because you're still slower then. Like in a car, you might drive through Kansas or Nebraska and go, "Oh my God, this is so boring," hour after hour after hour of I-40 or whatever like that. But then you're on these little back roads and you'll see little things like I remember seeing a little toy giraffe that somebody just glued to one of the you know, the barriers to stop you going off. And somebody had spray painted in really small letters, "Choose love." Now, I just thought nobody's ever going to see that apart from about 10 people, and I was one of them. And so people say, "Oh, well, I couldn't run across the country," you know, and obviously you've got so many like wonderful trails and stuff like that. If somebody wanted to do something that wasn't necessarily like an AT segment, I would say like even do something like, you know, do like California north to south, do Texas, you know, sort of Beaumont to El Paso. Like you see almost all of America in sort of that segment, you know. And so it's become like sort of a passion of mine. I'm telling people to do these road trips in America because, you know, sort of, I still think that America is the greatest country on earth, you know, sort of, and I don't want it to start getting this reputation as a, you know, as a nutcase asylum, because it just isn't. There's bad things happening, but there's bad things happening everywhere. And if people start to realize that we start focusing on the good, less of those bad things will happen.
Well said, Rob. And I've got to let you in on a secret. I think maybe those homeless guys outside the McDonald's, they might have considered you one of their own.
It happened a couple of times. Like I remember I was like outside a gas station. What was I eating? A donut? Probably. And a guy just came out and just went, "Here you go, buddy." And I just thought, because initially my brain, like I'd gotten used to, originally I was like refusing when people would say, "Oh, here's $10." I'd be like, "Oh no, guys, don't worry about it." And it was like, I switched when this fella said to me, he goes, "I believe the words that you're looking for are thank you." And I was just like, "Yeah, actually, thanks, mate," you know. And so, and after that, I was getting used to people shaking my hands and there being like a $5 or $20 in there, you know, sort of a guy sort of in a karaoke bar gave me $100 after doing Back in Black. And like sort of, he took me to the toilets. He said, "Come with me, big guy." And I just thought, oh my God, what's going to happen here? Because he told me it was his favorite song and not to mess it up. And when I sort of went through, he got his wallet out and just pulled out a note. And obviously I was polite, so I didn't go, "What is it?" But as he just gave it to me, I just saw it at 100, and I just said, "Oh mate, I can't take that. Can't take that." And he went, "Don't worry, I'm good for it," you know. And I just thought, oh my God, you know. And yeah, so these just, you know, the unexpected sort of rewards you'd find in the strangest of places. And by the way, no, I'm not going to sing Back in Black for you.
Oh, that's gonna be my next question. I wanted to hear the Rob Pope rendition of Back in Black.
One day. Well,
One day.
You can actually get to see me on my YouTube channel. There's not much on it, but you get to see me lip syncing to a number of like sort of like rock hits, and there is Highway to Hell on there. I was actually in the fog in Death Valley, heading towards where it was snowing, singing Highway to Hell.
Awesome. Incredible. I'll have to check that out. Now, I know that you have some causes or maybe some charities that you like to represent, and were you promoting those on the Gump Run?
Well, the main reason why I continued past Santa Monica, because obviously my goal was not to come out of it without a house deposit, sort of from that, I was just like, no, we're going to keep going. We'll just keep spending the money until we got no money left, because I was running for two causes. Now, when Forrest runs across the Mississippi for the fourth time and he gets pursued by those reporters, they say, are you running for women's rights, the homeless, the environment, world peace, or animals? And of course, he replies, I just felt like running. And so I decided to run for those five things. And I chose the World Wild Fund for Nature, which covers the environment and animals, and a charity called Peace Direct, which tries to stop conflict before it kicks off, because we all know that our governments aren't very good at this. And so they'll do on a lot smaller scale by like sort of women's empowerment, providing homes for child soldiers, so there's your women's rights and homelessness like covered. And then obviously world peace would be lovely. So I was never going to stop until I either physically, I had like $10 I kept in my phone case. And that was just designed basically to like flag someone down and say, hey, mate, can you give me $10 to get to the nearest town and stuff? And I would get somebody to put me up and then just get a Greyhound and a plane home. And so as long as I didn't spend that $10, I was going to stay on the road. Or physically broken. There were a couple of times like when I tore my quads in Tennessee, or I had like really, really bad piriformis syndrome in Alabama that it got really close to going home, but I always managed to pull through. And I would use those two charities as a major totem. But the actual singular point, I said at the start, I was a mama's boy, brought up by my mum. Well, sort of my mum, again, like Forrest, didn't make it to the end of the movie. It's actually 20 years this year since she passed away. And she basically said to me, like in her last sort of few months, just do one thing in your life that makes a difference. And didn't say anything, it's part of a conversation. It wasn't an Admiral Nelson moment, with a dying breath, but she didn't specify anything. She said, just do one thing in your life that makes a difference. And so I sort of thought I was probably going to be through my work, but then even though I might be making a difference to individual people, so I wasn't going to sort of, cure a major disease or anything. And so it was only when this run fell into place and Nadine said, this job's not working out for you. This is the time to do the run. This is now we go, and it's just like, right, okay. And then, of course, it was doubly nailed in when I found out the other chap was doing it, because I thought, well, if I don't do it this year, sort of someone else is going to. And so on we went. And, I would often think about my mum when I was doing it, just thinking, oh, my God, she would have so been in the support crew. She would have done my head in. I don't know if that's an American phrase, but she literally would have been drove me mad, I imagine. But, your mums drive you mad while they're with you, and then you really wish they were driving you mad when they're not, So I was made up. I did it for her. That was great.
That's an incredible story. And Rob, you sound like a very lucky guy with very supportive women in your life. Obviously, your mom and her guidance to you, that's epic. And Nadine, she sounds like a keeper.
Yeah, she absolutely is, man. Well, the fun thing is going back to that Idaho story. We found out that Nadine was pregnant in Fergus Falls in Minnesota, and so we got across the north. And moments after my brush with moose-related death, I had this song stick in my head, "Sunshine on Leith," and I listened to it over and over and over again. And I went back and I said to Nadine, have you ever heard this song? And she went, yeah, why? And she just goes, well, because if we have a boy, I'm going to call him Leith. And I was just like, that is so weird. And I said, well, what are we going to call her if she's a girl? And she went, Be. And I was just like, oh, okay. So not B as in Beatrice, Bee, as in the stinging one. And then in this another completing the circle of serendipity, when I was talking to those guys in South Chicago, the main joker of the group, huge guy, was wearing a Muhammad Ali shirt, and his name was B. And so it was a whole, float like a butterfly. And so, yeah, swarms of bees.
Synchronicity is real. We're all interrelated. It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Sting got it right.
Yep. All right. Hey, what's next for Rob? What's next for the Donut King? What's the next adventure? I think you got something coming up.
Yeah, well, sort of, there's always ideas, like sort of once I was hoping to do some like sort of winter running, but a few weeks ago I twisted my knee getting out of the car, and I had an adventure.
That's not a very good story, Rob.
Yeah,
you need to put some excitement into that story.
Yeah, well, after today I need to build up these guns. They're not very big. But I recently became the first person to, well, this was 2 weeks after I twisted my knee. Recently became the first person to run across Ireland in a day. And so I went to Galway. I had a pint of Guinness at 10:30 at night, and I got to Dublin at 10:10 the following day. And so in time for the Edge's birthday. So I called the run Edge to Edge.
Nice. And do you have a book coming out?
Well, yeah, like so the actual hardback is out now in the States. And so that was released in March of this year. It's called Becoming Forrest. You'd think I'd be surrounded by copies of it, but I'm not. But it is, an excellent book. I might have oh, no, I haven't got it. Most people are going to be listening to this anyway, but it's called Becoming Forrest. It's got a picture of me in my full Chewbacca beard state. And the paperback is going to come out in the States, I believe, on March the 3rd. And so my plan, if I can make it out there then, is that point where I stopped in the desert, sort of in Utah, is I'm hoping to come out and basically do what was next. You see Forrest go through the crowd, and then nobody knows where he went after that. You've also seen that I'm probably a little bit obsessive over the details on this kind of thing.
No, obsessive? That's a little strong.
Yeah, I've gone down to 44 on the insanity scale now over the course of the podcast.
You've lost some points.
Yeah. And so I worked out the total. It was 4.77 geographic times across America. Distance-wise, it's over 5. So, I'll always be able, if my leg falls off, I'll be able to say 5, but geographically 4.77. So I would like to run from Kayenta through to probably, I think it'd be a fitting point to have it in Santa Monica and have a big sort of Bubba Gump jambalaya and one of their beers in the novelty cups and draw a line under the whole shebang and then run across Australia.
Nice. Well, when you get to Santa Monica, you have to let me know so I can go down there and bring a box of donuts and some beer.
Absolutely. Not a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Oh, there you go. Staying in character. Very good. All right. Hey, Donut King, you know where we are?
That time?
That time.
The pro tip insight of the week.
That's right. So, Rob, what do you have for our listeners? What bit of outdoor adventure wisdom can you share with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better?
Well, whenever we go through something long like this, we've always established that there's going to be hitches along the way. And for most of us, that usually ends up in some sort of painful experience. Now, I am scared of injury. Like at the moment, I'm not sure if I'm being overly protective over mine. But the best bit of advice that was ever given to me when I was struggling in Houston, because I had tendonitis and my shin was creaking, and my physio said to me, the creak is going to be there for a long time. Ignore it. It's irrelevant. Be guided by your pain. So if your pain is no more than a 3 out of 10 and isn't steadily increasing, you can carry on doing what you're doing. If your injury is something to worry about and is progressing, it will go from a 3 to a 4 to a 5, or just take big leaps, So if you're going there and you're saying, no, I can't do this because my knee still hurts, it's going to hurt because you've not done anything to your knee for a while and you're coming back after a 4-week layoff or something like that, So make sure you don't go beyond your limits and you'll be fine.
Fantastic. That is some great advice. So there you have it. That's it. This episode is just about in the books. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with the Donut King. I want to thank him for joining us this week. Rob, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
So on social, I am Run Roblar Run. So it's like Run Forrest Run, and Roblar is ROBLA. So almost Run Rob LA Run. Yeah.
Okay. Remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. No TikTok for Rob?
Well, I am going to do it if I do that run from Cayenne to Santa Monica and stuff. And obviously, if anybody wants to check out the podcast after they listen to yours, it's called How to Be Superhuman, and there's some cool stuff on it. And don't give me any credit for the technical wizardry in it. It's nothing to do with me. I'm just here for like sort of banter.
Nice. And if you have comments or clips you want to share with me, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com.
The Adventure Media Recommendation.
Rob, I'm also looking to you to share a recommendation for a book, a movie, documentary, some type of outdoor adventure media. We're calling this our Adventure Media Recommendation. What do you have for us?
I would definitely go back to Gabe Cordell's role with it, because that does sort of, it's a sort of, sort of experience that makes you think no matter where you're starting from, you can achieve something wonderful.
Okay, outstanding.
And my book.
What have we not asked you?
And Rob's book, of course. And that was Half Calf with her increasingly bizarre attempt at sounding British. This is a segment. This is a segment called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About?
Wow. Okay. This is a tricky one.
This is your opportunity to share anything.
Right. The 3 best donut shops in the US. Okay. So number 3, Voodoo Donuts, Portland, Oregon. Number 2, Sweetwater Donut Mill in Michigan. I believe there's more than one outlet. And number 1, Ralph's Donuts in Cookeville, Tennessee.
Wow, those are highly specific. Those are not chains. It doesn't sound like they're chains. So we'll have to get out there and check those out.
We've got about 3, so.
Okay. Well, that is a wrap from the John Freaking Muir studio. Any shout outs to friends and family, Rob?
Just the whole running community, you are something special. So just make sure whenever you go past a runner or a walker or a hiker or even a cyclist, even though they don't really like us, just wave and say hi.
Nice. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you've had to fight off a pack of stray dogs with your stroller and a tiger tail. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.